Welcome to Conscious Eye, living in authentic connection and harmony with self, others, and the world, featuring Ravi and Savitri. Good
All
morning,
right.
Ravi.
Good morning, Savitri.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
Good. It's pretty wild that we're halfway through February.
No kidding. And coming up to all kinds of interesting energies in the next
Hmm.
3 days. They're piling up in addition to having the majority of the planetary family all in one location again. They keep traveling as a unit. I guess they haven't quite decided what their plan is yet. So from the time they started in in Sagittarius a few months ago, and now they're moving up as a unit, makes me think this is a very interesting and maybe involved planetary family planning session. So we'll see what happens because they start to spread out a little bit in April and come together again here and there. So, yeah, we can get into that a little later, but you mentioned this morning that something was going on with you when you woke up.
Yeah, it was, well, I think it kind of started last night, just getting some real intense tension in my shoulders, between my shoulder blades, which is really unusual and strange. And I worked with it last night through my Kriya set, and this morning again just woke up with that tension and worked it out this morning. But just noticing my body kind of creating some tension.
Yeah, and that from what I'm hearing and what I'm sensing from the upcoming eclipse, even though it's not a total solar eclipse, it's a ring of fire. The eclipse with a solar eclipse in Aquarius brings a sense of collective, and we are very much coming out of Capricorn, just barely, which is very earthy. So I've had quite a few people in my somatic class mention that this week has been really hard on their body. And when you finished your Kriya set, how did you feel after that?
Much better. Being able to move my body and release some of that tension. Um, it felt, it's almost like my body was locking up. And I'm doing a Kriya set that it involves stretch pose and bridge and just some things that, where you create tension and then release. And I think that that helps a lot to release the body's tension.
Yeah, and that's going on with Rahu and Ketu, the north and south nodes right now, with Rahu being in Aquarius, which is where moon and sun is going to meet up in a nakshatra called Dhanishta. And that's an interesting nakshatra in its own that I'll talk about in a little bit. But then across the way, the south node in Leo, which is where the sun resides. That's the sun's house of Leo, and the sun rules it. And we're getting that kind of dynamic that you just described, tension and intention to release, tension and then effort or maybe ego to create release, which doesn't really always create release when you have to use effort and ego to release it. So we're having those dynamics. It's a very much push pull and not necessarily collaborative energy. It's the king versus the collective, and the collective versus the king, back and forth. And when the sun knows it's going into an eclipse, and when it gets there, that's going to diminish some of its rulership from Leo. And we know Sun isn't always on board with those things when that happens. So, yeah, I'm glad to hear that your practice helped. And I don't usually give homework in my somatic practices, but I did this week. And we did some specific things for people that had told me they needed, shoulders or hips or back or maybe a headache or something else that was going on. So I can share that all with you. I woke up with everything I just mentioned this morning, including the headache. So it's better now. I too did some meditation this morning, just very little bit of physical practice. And here we are, ready to dive in.
Yeah, I think the hips was another area that was really tightening up for me over the last couple days as well.
Yeah.
And this was, let's see, I think I'm only 7 days out from completing my 40 days with this set. So have definitely felt some transformation, not only in my body, but in my, how my projection, and how I perceive the world. So this has been a good 40-day practice.
Yeah, that's another outcome of this eclipse. And Sunday night, overnight, it's also aligned this year with a major celebration called Mahashivratri, which is honoring Shiva. And so it's on the calendars as a major celebration. And with that brings breaking patterns, creating transformation, and in some ways dissolving things that maybe we think are good for us, but the universe has made a different choice. And this energy from Mahashivratri brings those energies to us to purify and to send us on our way. So one of the outcomes to that is sometimes a change in perspective, a new worldview. And I say worldview not with the intention of what we're thinking about in our world right now, which is a lot of information around New World Order and all those things. That's not what I mean. What I mean, it's more of a spiritual basis in how we see life and our dharmic path. The other interesting thing that I'll share with everyone, I don't usually share things about my own chart, but this might give you a little bit of curiosity about your own chart, so you can send me a message, check my email, go out and look at the website, get in touch with me if you have some curiosity, and we can talk. But this particular eclipse, where Rahu happens to be, is very close, would almost be on target to be where my birth Rahu is. And the eclipse is happening at 436 degrees, which is just barely into Aquarius. My Rahu on my birth chart lives at 410. So I feel when I started looking at our work this morning, and I knew that, but I hadn't really put it all together until I started mapping it out to talk about it. And I thought, oh, okay. This is why I am the way I am this week and maybe next and for the next week after that, until we get to the lunar eclipse in 2 weeks. And then we have our next round of eclipses in August.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. Well, you mentioned this instability, not necessarily on a collective level. Like you're talking about the personal planets that are, making this little journey together in their little group. I do want to circle back real quick to Neptune and Uranus, because those are also doing some pretty major things, making some pretty major transits, with Neptune moving into Aries and Uranus moving into Gemini, and for the first time in 165 and 84 years, and we are seeing some turbulence on the collective level there, especially with Neptune being just a it dissolves boundaries and moving into a very individual sign of Aries. So something to be on the lookout for over the next 14 years or so, but especially the first 5 as we're working into this, is we're going to be maybe looking at how we restructure boundaries on the collective level. And you may need to personally watch for this too. There seems to be, if you look at our political and social structures right now, a might makes right sort of attitude. There's a crossing of boundaries forcefully. We've been seeing that recently, and so we may be, as a collective, being asked to rethink what our boundaries are and what they mean and why they exist. And we may be seeing some shifts in boundaries. If we think about, if boundaries are just, we've created them, they're invisible lines, Neptune doesn't see them. So we will be seeing some disruption, I think, on the collective level, the global collective level there. And with Uranus moving into Gemini, we've seen a lot as it was transiting through Taurus in the last 6 or 7 years. We've seen a lot of disruption in our what we've considered to be material values. Some things like our food supply. There's been a lot of disruption there. And banking systems. We saw the rise of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin over those years, and we'll be seeing that activity maybe shifting the focus as we move now, but really having rethought what we consider to be valuable and what makes us feel secure. And for us on the collective level, we may be seeing that all the money in the world can't buy you what really makes us feel safe and secure as humans, and that you can try to protect yourself with material things, but what really provides us stability and security is what we build within.
I wanted to just say that those placements that you were talking about, I'd like to blend that a little bit with a Vedic perspective, because I believe that you were looking at the tropical degrees of placement, which are very interesting. And with the outer planets, although I don't use them, I do look at them because there's relevance there, and they set a stage for a foundation, since they're so long in their orbits that once they are in a particular location in the sky, they do generate kind of a fabric, a foundation, where the other planets then travel over that and pick up some of that energy along the way, and it shifts and changes them too. So there are a couple things that are really interesting when we start talking about blending the outer planets positions with the outer planets of tropical and the outer planet positions of Vedic methods. And so we can carry some of that energy across 2 signs. Yay. So some of the
Right.
things you talked about that was moving out from a Vedic perspective is just moving in.
Right.
And so when we look at how those two things work together, I think we get a really big picture of how firmly that energy of Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus really are in in I know we talk about grounding and we think about, oh, can we ground something in the cosmos? But I'm going to use that word because it makes sense to us. They ground the energies for the rest of the energies to have a foundation. So when I looked at that, and I know that we would be talking about this, Uranus is just coming into Taurus from the perspective of the Vedic astrology and is at 3 degrees. So we're just getting started. And the same thing with Neptune. And then that brings Neptune into a conjunction with Saturn.
Yes.
And those happened historically over time too and brought some interesting things to bear. And I think in one of our previous episodes, you talked a lot about that and how the Saturn Neptune conjunction historically had some influences and impacts. But I'll just review because that's happened in a few different signs other than Pisces in the past. So right now we would talk about secrets being revealed, and you talked about that in the previous episode, and today that would be something that Neptune was moving out of into Aries, into a more vibrant, where maybe the secrets become very well known. They're no longer secrets and they carry a lot of strength and vibrancy. And in 1989, there was a Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Sagittarius, which is when the Cold War ended. And I think you might have mentioned that last time too. And then in 1952-53, the conjunction was in Virgo. And that's when there was that new order, NATO, and some other things coming out of the Second World War. 1917, we had the fall of the Soviet Union and the rise of communism there. And in 1773, it was in Leo. And we know what happened then. We had the birth of the United States in the sense that we were beginning to separate ourselves from the king. So we've come full circle, and I love when you bring those 3 planets out because they have so much beauty, actually. When we look at them, I can remember studying astronomy at one point in time in my life, other than astrology, and they're so unique, like with the color and the rotation and the way their axes are placed differently than some of the other planets. And now we know that I'm not sure which one it is, but one of them has rings. And then Pluto was downsized from being a planet, and now they're trying to reconsider that and figure, well, maybe we need to keep Pluto. But the other interesting thing about them, and I would be curious to hear what you have to say about this, that at some point in the next month or so, like right now, I look at Pluto in the Vedic chart. So I'm just going to go there for a minute. And this will happen both in the tropical and Vedic. In May, mid-May, Pluto goes retrograde. So what does that mean? And I don't know those planets well enough, so I'm gonna ask you if you can help us with that. And then we have Neptune going retrograde in July, and then Uranus finally goes retrograde as well, and that happens in well, actually, that is over. That happened in December of this last year. So what do you think when they go retrograde, given all of the information you have about how they impact us as Earth creatures?
When planets go retrograde, we're looking at a review, right? Mm-hmm. We're looking at an opportunity to review systems and structures that we've all been living under, especially with these outer planets, which, like you said, they kind of ground the more personal planets. I like to think of it as, like you mentioned, there's it's more of the fabric that we're all living in. I think of it as the kind of the zeitgeist, right? That energy that we're all under, that we may not necessarily see all the time because we're swimming in it. So, like the fish in water doesn't know it's in water. So, when these planets go retrograde and allow us to review some of these systems and structures that we've been under for so long that we didn't know we were wrapped in them, now we can take a look at it through a different lens, and maybe, even though they're still very difficult to see because they're harder to put your finger on, I think, especially Neptune, which the whole idea of Neptune is it's very dreamy and difficult to describe. It's that idea of almost like in meditation, when you finally get it and then you no longer have the words to describe it. Mm-hmm. So in short, I think we're seeing this. I think we're seeing the collective kind of say, oh, wait a minute, let's take for the patriarchy, for example, the patriarchal structure that we've been living under for so long and didn't even realize how we're all influenced and impacted in many, many negative ways because of it. And now folks are waking up and going, oh, hey, yeah, this isn't so good for us. Even if we look at it again, just one example, we look at where we are with the SAVE Act for voting. Now we have a system and structure in place that maybe we didn't notice before, but now just because you're a woman, you may have to go through extra steps, pay extra fees to vote. And one of the reasons that is making that more difficult is because we just take husbands' last names without even thinking about it. We've just done it forever and ever, and why? And what's the harm? And that's just how it's done. And now that structure is being used to negatively impact us. And so we won't, it's something that we haven't seen as harmful until we've been forced to kind of review it and look at it differently, because we have a political situation in which that structure is being used more forcefully against us.
It's interesting you brought that up, because I had a client this week, a coaching client, that is trying to get back to have her voter's registration in her maiden name. Well, she's been married 4 times and in various states, and they need a thread or the paper trail from the time that her birth certificate was generated through the marriage, then the divorce, then the marriage. So you can see that if there were multiple marriages along the way and the names were changed each time, that gets very complex, time consuming, and there's always a fee, like you mentioned, to have new documents generated or to have something established to show the connection, because I don't think many women would have thought in the past to save any of these documents or even to have one generated. Once a divorce and a marriage was put in place, what happens to the marriage certificate? Well, some of us, keep those things and they're keepsakes, and others, who knows where they went after several moves or whatever.
Burn
And
them in a sacred fire.
well, and that too. I suppose that's probably a very well chosen option in many cases. So when you have that, and now she's faced with this, um, yeah, we spent some time just trying to map out the process that she would need to be able to establish, because it had to have been done in order as well. And yeah.
On top of that, then we have, cuts in departments that serve to provide those documents. So for anybody saying it's not impactful, your rights aren't being taken away, just do this. It's so simple. It's definitely coming from a place of privilege. And what I mean by that is if you don't have to think about it and you don't have to do it, or it doesn't impact you, that's a place of privilege. Mm-hmm. And this is impacting us. It will impact many of us. It'll impact our ability to choose leaders in this country. And that's a big deal. So those are the kinds of lenses we're looking through as I think these outer planets start to really reveal to us the things we couldn't see before, especially when they're retrograde, because they are the fabric, that we are woven into. They are the zeitgeist. And now that we're seeing them through, maybe a different lens, or as they're being brought up for us to review, it's disruptive and it's scary, because it feels like we don't have a lot of say or control. But we need to be reminded that everything is made up. Nothing is real except for what we've collectively decided to agree upon. And if we collectively decide differently, then we shift the reality in which we live. So the times that we're in are going to be disruptive. They're going to look a little scary, but they're presented to us for us to work through our collective karma and live a more collectively dharmic way, where we are practicing as a society some of those aspects of yogic living that we talked about in previous episodes of, doing no harm and living a life of service, and things like non-possessiveness. And again, that Uranus transit, either coming into Taurus or leaving Taurus to move into Gemini, depending on which model you're looking through or using. Again, it comes down to a lot of what we consider to be valuable is shifting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, if anyone's interested in how this would personally influence you, or you're curious about maybe that blend. Well, I had my Western chart done, or maybe I had my Vedic chart done, and I'd like to see how it looks so that I can start thinking about how that might be a way to check in on my life so far and what might be happening in the future. So I have to say, though, I know both of us are not predictive astrologers, and we look at the energies at the moment or within a time frame and talk about that. And it's up to us with our free will to understand those energies that are coming and make decisions around how we live our lives, adjust our dharmic path, or resolve karma if it comes our way, which it will. It does. That's why we're here. And yeah.
And make meaning make, again, we're always under the influence of these planets in one way or another. It's just that they're shifting in position now, which will give us different, again, different lenses, different perspective, different flavors, however you want to think of that, in these particular areas of our lives. So it's nothing to be afraid of. It's just something to consider as you make meaning of your own life and how you interact in your community and in the collective.
We had another topic today too, and it's related. It's the Chinese New Year.
And we talked about that a little bit before, how it's the year of the fire horse. Something I wanted to mention about the Chinese zodiac is that it runs on it's a sexagenarian cycle, so it's a 60-year cycle. The last time that we had a year of the fire horse was, I believe, 1966, if that makes sense.
Oh, let's think about that year. No, I'm
Right,
kidding.
exactly. So we have, and that 60-year cycle represents a full significant life cycle. So it's if we think of, 60 years, that especially in the past might have been a very full, rich life. That's a significant cycle. Yeah. All right. So this year of the fire horse, which really starts on the 17th, will run us through February 20th of 2027. Again, 1966 being the last time that this particular fire horse transit occurred. This symbolizes unstoppable energy and passion and is often associated with tumultuous but transformative times. It is a time to break free of old patterns and to take major calculated risks. And I think some of the things that we see or can look back on, we saw the rise of the Communist Party in China. It was officially launched that year. We saw in the U.S. an escalation of the Vietnam War, which led to intensified protests, anti-war sentiment, and political unrest. Civil rights movement gained momentum in the United States with Martin Luther King Jr. challenging racism, housing inequality. We also launched our first operational satellite. The Soviet Union achieved the first soft landing on the moon. So a lot of, again, major, we think of that fire horse energy, it's innovation and exploration and, but also, again, transformation, because we're under all of what we do and why is up for review. And are we doing as a civilization what is best for all, or are the systems and structures in place serving just a few? That's definitely where we're here we are again.
Yeah. It's interesting how their zodiac transits as well. We hear the fire horse, and each of the 12 animals in the zodiac have an element attached to them as well. So when you think about a 60-year cycle, here comes the math, everybody. So just take a deep breath. So when you think about 12 animals and 5 elements, 12 times 5 is 60. So it takes 60 years to go from, as you mentioned, the fire horse to the fire horse, because the next time the horse comes up, it'll be a different element until it comes back 60 years from now to the fire horse. And each of the animals go through that. So we often think about, okay, and we have an animal that we are assigned based on our birth year. And we know that that's going to come back and be our year every 12 years. But it comes back as a different element. So it might be fire one year, might be water another year, it might be metal another year, and then earth as well. So when we think about it that way, there are some amazing nuances in the Chinese zodiac that really get us into attributes and characteristics of personality and ways of being. So I love it.
Yeah, and the I find it interesting the elements follow a cycle of creation and destruction. So wood feeding fire, fire creating earth, earth bearing metal, metal carrying water, and water nourishing wood. And then they repeat. I think I'm an earth horse.
Mahashivratri, that celebration, that honor of Shiva, that energy that I mentioned when we first started. And we've talked about the eclipse, we've talked about the Chinese fire horse this year, and some common themes come up. And I just noted along the way some of the things that I was hearing you describe with the outer planets and the eclipse that's coming up. And of course, we have to mention not only that, but it's going to be a new moon, which means that everything is a birth of this eclipse, Mahashivratri, the transits of the planets and the strength of Aquarius versus Leo and Leo versus Aquarius. But some of the common themes really for this time: inner awareness, destruction, but destruction of ignorance, and that fits beautifully with what you said about Neptune. These are Shiva energies that come to us. Destruction of the ego, the cosmic union, spiritual growth, and ultimately liberation. So we have that as well that's coming into this time with all these energies. So if you wake up and your body hurts, you wake up and you feel tired, and you wake up and you say, I'm going back to bed. All of that has to do with understanding and feeling and sensing and being influenced by these energies. And the energy of the eclipse is also of unification. It brings together Shiva's drum and Vishnu's flute. And when we think about the drum, that's our pattern, our rhythm of our steps on our dharmic path. And the melody are the nuances and the activities and the resolution of the karma, where we have dissonance and melody, harmony and unity with the rhythm. So I wanted to share Dhanishta, that nakshatra where the eclipse will occur, as just one more layer of energy, one more defining feature of some of the things that this next couple of days will bring to us.
And if I can just focus on one thing that you said that really stands out to me, and that I hope that everyone listening hears, is that these cycles and transits, they bring big, scary, disruptive energy sometimes. It's always towards the goal of liberation for us personally and for us collectively. So again, just that reminder to be grounded in your practice, because especially as Neptune, where placement, where whether you're looking at the Vedic or the tropical placement, we're really moving into a period of, we're not just out there talking about our faith or our belief system and not practicing it. So you don't get to talk about family values and watch people be snatched off the street. You don't get to talk about, feeding the hungry and, eliminate food security for your country's citizens. We're at a point where we're going to be asked to not just talk about our spirituality, or I think we're going to be seeing a lot of spiritual bypassing really come to full light, and really will be asked to live our beliefs, to act on them. So remaining consistent in your practice and diligent in your practice and actually living your values is going to be a theme for,
thanks for that.
some time to come.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. It's walk the talk.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been doing a lot of talking for lots and lots of decades. And it has built the awareness for many, and helped us define different ways of being. So walking the talk is the next step to really make it whole.
It's just a reminder we're in it together, and we'll be in this year we'll be coming up with some ways to practice together.
Yes.
So
Yes.
stay tuned.
And please like and share, ring the bell, and send the video to people that you think might be interested or might benefit. They don't always have to be aligned exactly with everything that we have a dialogue about. The idea is to generate some energy around thinking, critical thinking, discernment, and bringing in new ideas. Maybe they're old ideas. There are no ideas on the planet, we know that, but new ideas that we haven't really thought about in different ways. So we look forward to hearing your comments.
Sat Nam.
Namaste.